All right, I don't know what time it is on your clock, but I know what I'm getting ready for. It is time for the Professional CISO Podcast with David Malicoat.
All right, gang, here we are. Special episode. So, wow, 50 episodes. I don't know what to say, quite honestly. I'm grateful for the journey. I think that's the first and foremost that I want to let everybody know. I didn't know what to expect when I started this, but as time went on and as we kept putting in the reps, man, it just grew, and we've had people reach out, people we didn't know, people that just kind of heard about us, found us on YouTube, found us on Spotify, and what a journey it's been. So I want to say some thanks to, well, one is our early adopters, right? So it takes a lot to get out there and find new things, and to be able to say, hey, I understand what's going on, and look and see what's out there, what's new, and what may resonate. And then also we had a set of early supporters, like folks that saw the vision, not necessarily as much listeners, but maybe more, whether it be financial support, introduction support, just getting folks, rallied around the cause, so to speak. So we would not have gotten this off the ground without both sets of you. So truly a lot of thanks. And then I definitely want to give a call out to our guests. So huge thank you. You took the time. You provided us your insights, and you told us your story, and that's huge. I think that's what made this thing go, and made it resonate with people. That's the feedback that we get. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your willingness to have that provocative conversation, and to be able to put yourself in a place where you're vulnerable, and not necessarily bulletproof all the time. So now, truly, again, thanks again. Huge set of appreciation for our sponsors today. Like everybody that's actually said, look, we believe enough in you that we're gonna put some resources toward this. It's amazing for us. It's what makes the big wheel keep on moving, quite honestly. And maybe it's a small wheel at this point, but it feels big sometimes. But in the end, we're appreciative. And the cool part is a lot of these sponsors are moving forward with us in 2025. It kind of got quiet over the holidays, but next thing you know, we kind of turned this corner into 2025, and I've had multiple conversations, and several, if not more than that, of different organizations that would like to engage and help us help them, I think would be a good way to put it. So definitely thanks to our sponsors last year, and looking forward to working with you in the coming months and year. So let's talk a little bit. Let's do a little short review. So, like, what did we accomplish? First and foremost, more than I expected. Honestly, I thought I would probably be sitting here in my home studio talking about whatever I talk about and having just a few listeners. At this point, we're reaching tens of thousands of people in a month, if not more. So, and that's across all of our different platforms, all of our different links of content, and that's huge for us. I think that's the growth has been transformational for us. So, truly appreciate it. But in the end, here we are. So we've done some transformational interviews. I can only point to one of the big ones was Joe Sullivan, having a former CSO of Uber come in with a live studio audience, being able to tell us his experience. I think the thing that I took away from that is his human experience. So it's a man that he wants to do right by things, and I think it got stuck in a position that was kind of untenable. And I don't know if any of us would have made different decisions. I think we could all armchair quarterback it on a Monday morning, but in the end, he's a good person that's continuing to do good things. So that was my takeaway, as well as all the learnings that he's willing to give us and talk about in depth again and again, and answer the hard questions for us. So Uh, Another one is the conversations with the top minds inside and outside of the cybersecurity field, right? So just having all these smart people come in and give us their story, give us their time, their experience, right? And help us understand the thought process that they go through. I think that's the big one for me. And it's not all applicable. I think that's one of the big things. And once we get to kind of the year in review here in a second, I think it'll come across. I don't think it's a matter of like, here's how you do cybersecurity, A, B, C, D, right? It's more of there's all kinds of different ways that we can do this, that we can accomplish this goal, and to be able to have more voices out there telling you their experience and just giving you these little, they may talk, for 15 minutes about something, and you may take 2 or 3 nuggets out of it that's going to help you on your day. I think that's one of the biggest impacts. So having these folks to come in and give us that immediacy of what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they've learned over, and then the long term, what they've learned over a career, what they, how to lead. Again, we'll get into it, but again, just having the access to those folks, people. Again, I've had folks that have literally traveled, given me their time, just come along for the ride, so to speak. We try to make it as easy as possible for them, but at the same time, sometimes it's not easy, right? And then there's the inside, which is sometimes you get out in front of a bunch of people. I can speak from this, just from starting the show. It's nerve-wracking, quite honestly. So we appreciate that those folks would come in, and again, we're already we got a list coming up for this year that second to none. So look forward to it. Another one is events, man. I think this one for us, we love doing events. It's a heavier lift, but at the same time, being able to go to events like RSA Conference, Digital Fight Club, Black Hat USA, North Texas ISA, what a fun time. And I think, as I've been telling folks here recently, we guild very well. Like if you remember back in the medieval days where you'd have the knights and they'd bring their, squires in and they'd teach them how to be knights and such. Again, kind of a guild, right? We do that very well. And man, that's how we build community. And I want to enhance that. That's kind of the goal as well. So to be able to come into these events, and we're already on the planning stages on many of them this year to include our RSA conference. Already have our press pass for that, which is pretty cool. Looking forward to Black Hat as well. But then there's some others. I think we're definitely working with the CISO XC here in the DFW area that are now expanding around, and we're looking to also get involved with HughSecCon as well. Plus some others. So just really looking forward to that conference slate where we can get together and then capture, right, some of those learnings, because we get together, man, there's a vibe, right? And there's a definite culture that we have, and I love to capture that and be able to talk to people about it and get the learnings that people have right there on the spot, and let folks, hear what that's like and encourage them to come the next time if they weren't able to make it to that one, right? And I think another big one, honestly, is new connections, colleagues, and friends, right? So I've met so many people. Wow. I mean, I can honestly say I look back and I go, I thought I was a decent networker, but in the vein of, or from the vision of the show, be able to go out and talk to folks and look at it from a perspective of what can we learn, and just, and then of course my guests, people that I know, my colleagues, they always say, hey, you should talk to this person, right? So that's pretty interesting as well to get that network effect going on. I always try to ask, like, who should I be talking to? So, I've had many folks be like, I think this person would be a great person to have on your show. And I'm great. Introduce me. Let's go. And so, and by the way, anybody listening, more than happy to take those suggestions as well. Give us a shout out on LinkedIn or on the YouTube page or anything like that. Let us know who we should be talking to, who would be interesting. And as long as they align with the intent of the show, I think we're good. Gotta have my coffee. All right. And I think finally, just kind of a general wrap up for the year. Man, our community is strong. I mean, we go through a lot. It's a tough deal. It's a tough job, right? I think everybody knows that. There's the whole burnout factor. There's the underappreciated, unappreciated. People don't really kind of understand all that good stuff. But in the end, I think we rally ourselves pretty well. and to be able to look each other in the eye and say, hey, yeah, we're good people. We're doing the right thing. This is a noble cause, and I will continue to polish my skills and experience to help continue to feed this community. So our community is strong, and I just wanted everybody to know that I appreciate that, because otherwise something like this just wouldn't be able to take place, right? It just doesn't float, right? You'd have a hole in your boat if your community wasn't strong. So just a kind of a report from the trenches here. Our community is strong, and you should be proud of it. All right. So I want to get into what we learn, right? So I found this interesting because the idea is like, okay, how do I do this? Because you have 50 episodes, course of a year. You talk to a lot of people. There's a lot of conversation. So you're talking, 50 plus hours of conversation roughly. How do we distill this down? And the place I want to start, because it's going to be as obvious as the nose on my face, so to speak, is, well, we got to talk about professionalizing the CISO role, because of course the way the show's set up, I always ask that question. So we'll talk that through a little bit, and obviously it's not going to be a surprise. It's not like I'm going to do a top 5 countdown and be like, oh hey, what are the top 5 things we talked about on the Professional CISO Show last year? Not like that. So I want to touch on all these kind of the top 5 learnings, and obviously professionalizing the CISO role is going to be one of those. So what I've seen, again, I think we've experienced over the course of this year is there's an evolution going on in the CISO role, right? And it really is from a technical expert to a business leader. And there's no doubt things have changed, and I think that things have changed relative to the expectations of us, as well as how we are developing ourselves, right? It's the mutual accountability, maybe you could call it, but this idea that, can you be that technical leader just solely in the technical realm? And it's very readily apparent in talking to the vast majority of our guests that those days are pretty well numbered. I mean, to the point where I've heard people ask if we should really be splitting the CISO role into more of a CTSO, Chief Technology Security Officer, and a CISO, something like that. Don't know how much legs that has, or if because again, if we're struggling to get our own acceptance in the C-suite or the boardroom, adding another role probably may not help that. But at the same time, yeah, I mean there's opportunity there. So I don't know. Maybe it's a case of having more technical fellows or something like that, or these emeritus, or these really top level. I don't want to call them architects, but these basically technical guru positions, as we could put it. Maybe that's an option, because there's value there, I believe. And so again, back to where we're developing, right? Are we developing in the direction that the demands are being placed on us? I think it's better now than before. I do. When I started this journey as an idea in May of 23, not so much, I don't think. And I'm not professing that we're the ones that did it. I think we had a piece in that, maybe a small piece, but in the end, I think being able to sit and have conversations about what that needs to be, what that needs to look like, and in what direction. Because again, there's so many, as I mentioned earlier, and kind of what we learned. So I think the key there is just understand it's going to continue to change, and that we have a responsibility to try to chart our own paths of how we develop ourselves. We have to understand, I go back to my Marine Corps days, right? Know yourself and seek self-improvement. I think we as CISOs or security leaders or security practitioners, we have to know ourselves. We have to know what we are today, and we have to seek self-improvement in the direction that the demands are being placed on our roles. And so if we keep that awareness, I think we'll be in a much better spot. No more black box, right? So it rolls down further into this idea of importance of business acumen for CISOs, right? And I think we've hit this really heavy on many of the episodes, that it is just now critical. There's no option. I think not being able to go and have a business conversation. I think one of the things I said not too long ago at a gathering was CISOs should really be business executives with cybersecurity expertise. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Again, it's not a thing of it benefits anyone or not or what. It's more of a, that's where I see the, what do they say in hockey? You got to skate to where the puck is going. I think we have to skate to that puck as from a business acumen perspective. I think, and further, more learnings around the CISO role, organizational leadership and strategy, right? It's interesting that we've talked quite a bit with a lot of our guests around that, how we sit in this unique position because of our remit, right? Which is we lay horizontal across every aspect of the business. And you learn more about a business by understanding the tools they use and how and what data they either manipulate or have access to, and then turn around and understand what controls you have to put in place. What does the risk look like? What controls you have to put in place to be able to secure it? And in this case, since we lay across all these different areas, nobody else in the organization, I would challenge, anybody, love to have this conversation with somebody. Is there any other type of organization that has as much visibility into a business than what security does, right? And also keep in mind that organizations are adopting even more complex and innovative technologies, right? And so, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but there's this whole risk aspect to what we do, right? So this idea of business executive, risk executive, is there ever going to come a time where it might be maybe the remit is too big? I don't know. But in the end, obviously we have to have, I think every other executive in a business has a risk mind typically, so I don't think that disqualifies it. But anyway, back to the risk executives, you have to understand having understanding of business risk, especially as these organizations adopt even more complex and innovative technologies. And, I won't say the dirty word, but obviously this, there's been a lot of developments recently on artificial intelligence and the democratization of it and the consumerization of it. So that could be it's going to be very interesting in the coming days. And then I think another piece of this is a little bit of shift, but it's building a strong brand as a CISO, right? And because I think, people ask, what kind of executive are you? I think now we're getting to the point, I actually had this conversation the other day where, we're exploring some topics of maybe for a dinner or something. And it's how, if we're having more, and I don't want to call it identity crisis, but if we're figuring out who we are, right? I go back to that, we're a teenager and we're trying to figure it out, trying to figure out where we're at as far as, we're a teenager in the grand scheme of things of the way that we do, as long as we've been executives. But what kind of executive are you from a branding perspective? And how can we make sure that the people that are hiring us have the proper expectations, that we can communicate, that we live up, we have those skills, requisite experience and abilities, and that we are that effective executive. And I think another piece of this is you got to get out there, right? It's and a lot of people do it, and there's some that don't. But I think now more than ever, I think there's kind of this a little bit of a movement to say, okay, well, I'm not gonna whore myself out and not I don't want to be a an attention seeker or things like that. But I also think there's you're going to have those conversations, whether it be in a boardroom, in an executive suite, or in front of a company. I mean, you have to have those skills anyway. I think now it's a case of we are in a place where can you exchange ideas and influence the path of cybersecurity in the broader industry as well as outside of that, as well as inside your organization, outside your organization. How can you make that influence happen? And I think maybe not everybody's ready for it. Maybe not everybody's set up for it. But at the same time, I think we are no longer in a place where we can be the black box leader, right? So just kind of some thoughts that the guests have put over the months. Even further, what does our continuing education look like and professional development for CISOs, right? There's movements. What resources are you tapping into to develop yourself? What means are you using to make sure that you're developing to where the role is headed? We're seeing now where there's professional organizations coming up more, let's say, more structured than what previously we've seen, whether it be ISC squared, ISACA, ISA. There's a professional organization where now it's more of like a CISO certification, and it's experience based as well as knowledge based. Like you have to go sit for like a board, and it'll be interesting to see to where this develops to. But I think having a stance or a view on where we need to collectively as well as individually, right? So of course collectively have a voice. Where are we going with this? How are we doing it? Have that influence, get involved in those conversations, but at the same time also have your own personal plan, right? And it's not what your boss puts together for you. How am I going to make sure that I am that CISO that of the future, or 2.0 or 2.1 or even 3.0, right? All right, so that kind of wraps up kind of the professional piece, right? So of course I ask that question every time. Should we professionalize the role, all that good stuff? What does it mean to you? Now there's some other themes that have come out and across the months, across all the interviews, and I think they're pretty impactful. So what we looked for was, can they what was the frequency of it, right? And so to have that ability to come in and say, okay, here's where the high water marks hit, and it's not going to be a surprise of kind of what this one is, which is CISO liability. Well, first and foremost, I started the show because of this, right? Because of Tim Brown, because of SolarWinds, and the idea that this guy's getting a Wells notice from the SEC, and being held accountable when he's 4 layers deep in the organization. So, one of the themes around this was understanding the personal and legal risks for CISOs. I talked to multiple attorneys. We're going to talk to some more as well, get a broad range of topics on that. It is a new world, and it's going to likely change over the next 4 years as well, because obviously we just had an election, and it seems that this administration has a different take on maybe what this looks like. So, does it quiet down for a while and then we pick up again? I don't know. But in the end, definitely need to keep an eye on it, need to have an understanding of exactly where it sits. And hopefully, my goal would be to get somebody from this new administration to talk from a policy perspective, right? To say, okay, what can we think of when it comes to just cybersecurity, companies being held accountable? How can we, and then obviously individuals as well. But also keep in mind that at least what we've seen so far as a CISO, you can be held personally liable, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent. At least that we've found so far. And if you've ever heard Tim Brown talk, obviously on our show you heard Joe Sullivan talk. There's a lot there, and it's complex, and it's not necessarily just straightforward. We did talk a lot about this year about the need for CISO liability insurance. Give me some more coffee. D&O, directors and officers, that can be provided by the organization. That's great. That's a good thing. Hopefully you can get on that. If you can't, then obviously that becomes a little bit more of an issue. But then there's the idea of individual professional insurance. Can you take out an insurance policy for yourself? Namely, can you get somebody else to maybe pay for it, right? And so we talked a lot about that over the year. Again, I think we landed in a place where the answer is yes, right? Get as much as you can. And then also what we saw was there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear that if I try to require these things, that maybe I won't get the job, or maybe I'm going to get out of favor with, I'm already asking for a lot of things when it comes to cybersecurity, right? Maybe I'm not going to be able to get that through. So something to think about there. Also, when it comes to liability, we talked about the role of legal counsel in cybersecurity incidents. I think this was a big one as well, and I can honestly say when we started this conversation on the show, I didn't realize kind of the nuance around it. Corporate counsel is just that. They're corporate, and they're there to protect the company and not necessarily to protect you. Keep in mind, this is not legal advice. Go consult your attorney. But they have zero requirement to consider your individual exposure as a CISO, right? And so obviously, as a good employee, as a good leader, you want to work with them for the good of the organization. But, what we've found in talking with, again, multiple attorneys and different folks, reserve that option to engage your own counsel, right? If you can. It's hopefully you can get them in the room. Again, a lot of folks are really open-minded about this because again, you're sitting in kind of the big seats in that way. So just keep that in mind that you want to make sure that you're protected because in the end they can go after your personal assets, and I think that's the key, that you want to protect those personal assets, protect your family, protect your future, right? We also talked about the impact of recent legal cases, and I already mentioned these before. Joe Sullivan with Uber, Tim Brown with SolarWinds. We also talked about the importance of understanding the legal and regulatory obligations, right? So similar to what I said earlier, it's ever changing, and it just clicked over on January 20th, and this is the reason why we bring cybersecurity attorneys in on the show. And of course, they're always going to say it depends. But just because they say that, they do give good context to what's going on, context to what they're seeing. So I think that is a thread that I'm going to continue to pull. Sean Toom has been a great partner when it comes to that. We're going to have him on again here real soon to make sure that we're going to talk more about his book, the GC CISO Connection. And we're also going to bring some other attorneys in to make sure that, hey, let's cover this as completely as we can. All right, so let's go to a next one. So one of the big ones that, again, keep in mind, this is the high water marks, right? So, if you want to do word count or, subject count or whatever, a lot of talk around building cybersecurity teams over this last year, right? So the importance of building a strong cybersecurity team, obviously it seems obvious, right? Like who wants a weak team? I think the key there, what we've kind of teased out from this, is it's not just about being technically and tactically proficient, right? So we're not talking about just the ones and zeros and the technical side. Honestly, one of the big themes around this was culture. It's a matter of what kind of culture are you building in your organization, right? In your cybersecurity, your remit under your umbrella, right? And that really goes right into attracting, recruiting, and retaining top cybersecurity talent. By the way, it's tough out there if you haven't heard, right? So interestingly enough, we've kind of uncovered some things, and I know I say uncovered, it's not like we're breaking news or anything like that, but in the end, I went and you start talking to folks, and we have kind of these two different things. I've had two different CISOs that I talked to recently in the last, couple weeks, and they talked about having one opening and had several hundred applicants for that one opening, okay? So let's think about that. That's huge. That's a huge response. And then the next thing we talked about, everybody talks about how we have a shortage. So how can we have, in one case, and maybe it's anecdotal, I'll admit it, but in the end, how can we have this one situation where, I kid you not, 700 people for one analyst position, and then turn around and we have some professional organizations. If you recall our episode with Ira Winkler, I went out and confirmed this information. Like they're putting out some what I would consider sketchy numbers. You can define it any way you want, but ultimately, if you're trying to define it in a way that says if everybody did cybersecurity perfectly, this is what the job market would look like, that's not really genuine, right? That's not, you're leading people to think that the demand is higher than it is, and that's not good. And so, in the end, I couldn't get anybody from ISC Squared to come on. We asked multiple times. We did a formal request. Reached out to multiple leaders on LinkedIn through LinkedIn messaging, and even had some folks interact. And then, the request was made, and then everybody went silent. So I think it's incumbent upon them to come out and actually talk to people and tell us what's going on. But I can tell you from just speaking to the number of people that I speak to, having these two things don't match up, right? So I think we as leaders, it is incumbent upon us to start asking questions and start demanding better things from those that pretend to represent us. Another one on building teams is building a positive and productive team culture. Talked about it earlier a little bit, but burnout is real. It's a real thing, easy to do. The other part of it is we are dedicated as a culture, right? As an overall industry, we're dedicated people. We are hard chargers, and a lot of times it's hard to be able to hold people back and say, no, because they just want to go like bam, bam, bam. Or there's the pace of demand, right? Those alerts are never going to stop coming in. So I think what we learned was the buck stops with the leader. Like, you have to take a stand. And at some point, you balance that hard work ethic with the never-ending demands of cybersecurity. It's incumbent upon you as the leader to do that, and think of innovative ways to do it. I think that's the other part. And again, listen to the shows, listen to the different leaders that and you like. They have some great thought leadership around this, and we'll continue to have more. I mean, this is not going to be one of those subjects that go away, right? And I think another one that we had was developing future cybersecurity leaders through mentoring and training. I think we have an opportunity here. Now that we're getting a better foothold on what we know that we're doing and how we're doing it as leaders, as the senior leaders in this industry, it's our responsibility to develop the next generation. So now that we have our foothold, we have to move it down and really push to get that next set of leaders in place and solidified and mentored, right? Identify that talent early, invest it into the future. That's what we've seen. That's a theme that we've been seeing, and it's worked well. Again, listening to thinking about some of the conversations I had with those leaders. Another one that's interesting too is balancing the need for specialized skills with the ability to adapt and learn, right? So this idea that, think of it like a mercenary versus training your own soldier, right? This idea. And so there's a lot of times we need that specialized skill, and we need to be able to just go thread that needle and get it done. But that resource is going to be pretty darn expensive, right? And I think move that down where you say, okay, can I invest? Do I have this option to be able to go and train these people into this part? I know, again, talking to a lot of these leaders, we had gotten ourselves into a place where we didn't want to train anybody because of the fear of them leaving. But ultimately, the risk comes because you don't train anybody and then nobody's trained. And so now you have this tiny, tiny little pool of mercenaries, and then everybody else is just kind of struggling. So I think if we can start with a development mindset first in our organizations, I think that's gonna help. It's you got to play the long game too, right? Again, right, wrong, or indifferent. But again, that's multiple conversations that we've had across the months. All right, moving on. More coffee. Talk about working with partners. That was a big one that came up. It's quite interesting. I was kind of surprised that this one came up on the full stack. And so importance of collaboration and partnerships in cybersecurity. So we talked internal, we talked external. Like we have to be experts at stakeholder management, right? And finding what is in it for the other folks that are involved, as well as what's in it for us. So I think if there's one skill set that you want to work on in the long term, how do you do your stakeholder management? How do you make sure that you've got everybody on board? Because again, talking about how we lay across the entire organization into that level, we have more information, we have more data points across an organization typically, and a bigger depth. And so I think being able to be experts at that stakeholder management and collaboration and partnerships is huge. Just talked about this, the building the relationships, right? So start understanding what these people do and how they do it, right? Because in the end, again, like a vast majority of our conversations around this with our guests, it's about trust, right? And if I walk into a room and start talking about what I need, I am not building trust. And so typically, start with them, start with the other person, understand where they're at, understand their struggles, right? And then in the end, you get the opportunity to have them pull in and develop trust with you. And then the ask can come, right? So unless it's an emergent situation of some sort, you've got an incident or something like that you're working, hopefully you've built up that trust ahead of time, right? Working effectively with vendors and service providers, right? I think there we've had a lot of talk with folks. Clear mission, vision, values. Like what does that alignment look like, right? Make sure that you're aligning with your partners and what you're after. And I know this sounds so simple, but maybe it's a case of not that we lost our way, but this idea that we can maybe do a little bit better. But I think if everybody's talking about it, like if there's a lot of my guests talking about this, then obviously it's something that's present on their mind. And so I think, because we've gotten in a place in the industry where vendors, it's all sales and how can I get butts in seats and how can I, and I think being able to get a true partnership together is unique, and there's value there. And so I think the ability to come in and really set the course on what an engagement and effective mission, vision, values looks like, making sure they're aligned, it can be a superpower. Another one, leveraging external partnerships for threat intelligence and knowledge sharing, right? I think that's I always say, and I'm sure my kids get sick of hearing this, but we are smarter than me, right? No one stands alone. And I think what we learned from this year is expect to give as much as you get. I think if it's one-sided, as much as you can. Obviously, everybody knows, oh, well, I can't because of, proprietary, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I think, again, try to explore new and inventive ways to be able to do this, to be able to share that information, receive that information, leverage it, whether it be based upon industry, vertical, whichever way. But I think try to find some innovation here, because I think that we have a real opportunity to be more collective in a good way, to be able to have our defenses be more robust overall. And the role of partnerships in building a strong cybersecurity ecosystem, right? Obviously, your first allegiance is to your organization, but also understand that you have a duty to the overall community, right? You have to share what you know and learn, and then you have to engage. I will call it out a little bit. I do see some big name, big company, big position leaders that they stay to themselves. And that's a concern, because there's so much that we can learn. And this is not a personal thing more than it's I try to communicate to folks, to come on the show and say, look, our industry can learn from there's a reason why you're sitting in the seat you're sitting in, right? And you have an opportunity here to be able to just share that with our industry, right? And it be in a way that's not self-serving, right? You guys know by that now. That's not how I run the show, right? Again, it's the whole idea of we are smarter than me. I just want to talk to more people to get more ideas out there to make us better overall over time. And I think we have a duty to ourselves, to our organizations, to our industry, and to those that are going to come behind us to make sure that we're sharing that information however we can do that. Again, panels, dinners, coming on the podcast, whatever it looks like. But you got to get out there and you got to share your wisdom, man, and ladies. You have to. All right. Now we're going to wrap up with the future of the CISO role. Just give me a coffee. All right. This is on everybody's mind. I can say that for sure. And it's not just a matter of should we be professional, right? But the future of the CISO role is not very clear right now. Obviously, emerging trends and technologies that's shaping the future of cybersecurity is one of those things. And I'll say it, AI, robotics, right? It's the ever-changing landscape. So geopolitical, regulatory, and compliance. Man, there's so much to just think about and to try to understand. And I think that's where the we are smarter than me comes in. I also think that's where we have to delegate more and better. Like even the thought leadership, even the discovery, even the R&D. Like we have to be able to delegate these things to trusted and mentored team members and become, again, it's they say elevate and delegate, right? And maybe people don't want to do it that way. But in the end, if we don't, I think we don't get in front of all these things, right? So something to think about there. Again, it's on the minds of a lot of our guests over the last year. That's only going to continue, quite honestly. And further, impact of AI automation and cloud computing on the CISO role. Things are moving faster, and they continue to move faster. I think we're on the edge of an exponential push into these different technologies. And that worries me, right? It should worry you. I think everybody is, but everybody's already sick about talking about AI. But at the same time, how can we also, as we saw with with the internet and networking and cloud, right? We started harnessing cloud and cybersecurity to make ourselves more effective, right? Instead of having the moat, and the layered defense. Now we're in the cloud, but now we can leverage that to make ourselves more effective in how we respond. I think that we're in a similar position here. So I think being able to come in and say, not only are we looking at how to defend it, how do we leverage this stuff? How do we make sure that, yes, again, we lay over the entire organization. How is our organization looking to use it, but also how are we going to use it? So now, can't say that without saying we need to think about the evolving threat landscape and its implications for CISOs, right? If there's one thing you can count on, that threat actors will change, and obviously they are. I think it was early last year we saw, at least I saw in my organization, where we started getting some very precise phishing emails, and it was, we could attribute it directly to AI, right? The idea of, it's when ChatGPT popped out, right? And so I think there is a big thing where, hey, there's always going to be this blend of historical repetition of attack types, right? Because what the attackers tend to do is they're going to rotate through these things and say, hey, okay, I tried that for a while. They started limiting us. They started, defending it pretty well. I'm going to go shift over to this other thing. And then, and then we kind of see how they kind of progress through those and it's like, not as we let our guard down, but as things change. And so they take that, apply different or new technology or a new vector, and then turn that around, and now you have a new different type of attack. It's just a little bit different, right? And so keeping that in mind with how we're developing, how we defend. So thinking about, can we defend in that way as well, right? So if they're harnessing a new technology, new vector, can we leverage a new type of defense or a new and developing technology to counter that? Another here is the need for CISOs to be adaptable, innovative, and forward-thinking. Again, these are learnings off of our guests. So in the end, what got you here won't get you there. I think we have to understand that not only are we on an evolutionary track, but I think we're on an exponential evolutionary track, right? We have to supercharge how we do this. And so development is a means to continually bring in and evaluate information, right? So how do I smarten my personal stack? How do I make that go faster? I think I heard the other day, the current generation or more recently, it's been about what information do you have, right? Do you have the information? Do you understand it? The next piece, the next generation of knowledge management or knowledge workers is going to be how quickly can you assimilate a large amount of information into something that is usable. So instead of just knowing it, now it is, do you have access and can you convert that into something that's meaningful in a very short period of time? So something to think about there. Be ready and willing to continually question your assumptions and approach. I think that's a huge thing. I think people get into the idea of, well, if I hire, the top cybersecurity company, I won't, say any names to, keep the guilty or innocent in wherever they're at. But if I'm hiring that top cybersecurity company that's in the top right of the quadrant, I'm good, right? Not necessarily. Again, you have to think your threat actors are out there. They're changing things. They're like we just talked about. They're rotating through and using different vectors, different avenues, different technologies on the same old playbook, right? So you got to think about that in that perspective as well. So the other side of this is, but you can't make it a situation where you continually second guess yourself, right? So don't go into this space where you're paranoid and you're like, don't get me wrong, but I think it's a disciplined approach on how you continually question your assumptions and how you continually question your approach for value, for incremental improvement, to make sure that you're changing as fast, if not faster, than those threats or the way the world is changing against you. So, and then finally, I think we're talking about with the potential for CISOs to play a greater role in business strategy and leadership. Again, we've seen this across all of a vast majority of our guests. We are developing as an executive role, and we have the ability to chart our own path, right? I think the bottom line that we're hearing from a lot of these folks is to strive to be a business executive with expertise in cybersecurity and technology risk. I think if there's anything that's come out of this show over the last year, I think that is it. And there's a lot of folks that don't agree with that. I mean, they don't. But again, this is not a case of where David Malicoat got on his stool and just started spouting his opinion from the top of the world. It's more of I've talked to a lot of smart people, and if we wanted to summarize kind of all those conversations, they're saying strive to be a business executive with an expertise in cybersecurity and technology risk. And if you're looking at your personal chart, the path that you're charting on your personal development, that should be kind of your one of your top line items, one of your guiding principles, and then you fill out that plan from there. So yeah, wow. What can I say? I want to thank everybody. We're back in the groove. We did take a couple weeks off, which is kind of needed a little bit, but I've had a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to what this year brings. It's been immensely rewarding, educational for sure. I definitely feel that I am a much different CISO now. I'm a much different person now, and hopefully, generally speaking, I hope that and I feel like my skills as an interviewer have gotten better. But again, ultimately, I appreciate everyone that tunes in. It is what we've heard and the feedback that we've gotten at key times, particularly, has really helped. And so, definitely encourage everybody to either write in or ping me on LinkedIn or any other of the social media platforms, and just connect, because that's what it's all about. Keeping this a community and keeping this where we are working well with one another to help our organizations and help each other be successful in this task. So with that, I thank you, and look forward to visiting a lot more this year. Thanks, everybody.
We're professionalizing the CISO role, so please subscribe to the Professional CISO Podcast.